Smooth, what's good, baby?
Anyway, for real. I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. Get these niggas on my comments before I shoot them. I got the suicidal thoughts and the don't make me lose it. The only thing could get some time from me is OGs. I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. Get these niggas on my comments before I shoot them. I got the suicidal thoughts and the don't make me lose it. The only thing could get some time from me is OGs. I'm a big dog, I don't want you now. Made the crowd scream on my own guys. I bitch you ready, red, bro, you down. He was supposed to be with Caesar Matthews, he's a 9. How you let the stinks take your pieces from me? Turn a nigga head into a Reese's cup. You wasn't on the main line, you was PC'd up. We got Draco in the building, turn to Stevie Wonder. Now we back to the punchlines. I'm finna do a nigga sleazy like that one time. I got a free bus pass, he on that one line. I tell my wrist handicap like that blind nigga. I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. Get these niggas on my comments before I shoot them. I got the suicidal thoughts and the don't make me lose it. The only thing could get some time from me is OGs. I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. Get these niggas on my comments before I shoot them. I got the suicidal thoughts and the don't make me lose it. The only thing could get some time from me is OGs. Man, I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. For real. Suicidal thoughts and the don't make me lose it.
I'm a big dog, I don't conversate with poodles. I make street music you can commit violent crimes too. If we beefing, I use chunks from your noodles to make spaghetti. Throwing house party when you hear them pop shots, it's not confetti. That shit under meniscus, I can eyeball it, no fatty. For a nigga, my shooter ain't a nigga world Armageddon. I want more chains to whip like my shit ain't broke already. And I don't wanna hit that crystal cause I'm dope already. Things came to take the rag ain't over and I hope y'all ready. Bitch act stupid, I fuck your mama, bitch you know I'm petty. Nigga think he fucking with me, must be blowed off fatty. This exotic stinky buzz, we don't smoke that Reggie.
I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. Get these niggas on my comments before I shoot them. I got the suicidal thoughts and the don't make me lose it. The only thing could get some time from me is OGs. I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. Get these niggas on my comments before I shoot them. I got the suicidal thoughts and the don't make me lose it. The only thing could get some time from me is OGs. Man, I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. For real. Suicidal thoughts and the don't make me lose it.
Whoa-dee. So look, bro, we talked about this on the channel before. Long ass day, but I want to go ahead and cover it again. Because there's a lot of misconceptions about this paper. And you know how suits do. You know how the suits do. They twist information, distort information, they spread and disseminate misinformation and disinformation. So I want to just touch on this paper again and just talk about what the paper is actually saying versus what people use this paper. I've heard people incorrectly use this paper to try to connect themselves somehow to ancient Egypt or try to connect Diop, what Diop said about ancient Egypt, which this paper is pretty much killing any idea of a sub-Saharan African group peopling North Africa, because when we look at these two genomes that we were able to sequence, they're not related to sub-Saharan Africans, if you read the paper. So I don't know how you're using this paper. I get so confused and perplexed when people actually bring this paper up in defense of Diop or Obenga or Ivan Van Sertima. It is just blows my mind. You're not really reading the paper. You're just regurgitating what you heard instead of actually analyzing. So tonight we're going to take out the time, read the paper. I got my notes right here. So we're going to go over a few things in the supplementary information just to clear things up about these two samples and what this paper is not saying. This paper is not supporting an Afrocentric notion. This paper is essentially saying that the two Takori rock shelter women are of an ancestral North African lineage. That's it. Nothing else. It's not related to people of Gabon, Benin, Togo, Angola, Nigeria, or Ghana. It's not related at all. These women are not related to people living south of the Sahara. These women do have some semblance to Levantine peoples, ancient Levantine peoples. And the reason why they do is because North Africans in general have it, especially during the Epipaleolithic all the way down to biblical DNA says this is about home team history. From the Epipaleolithic all the way to the Middle Neolithic all the way to present times. So yeah. Hey, Ramal Yahoo says, I just noticed a couple months ago how the niggers they dick ride in Egypt, but we from West Africa, niggas don't like Africa, they like Egypt. And I'm gonna put an extra layer on that. We're not just from West Africa. Our ancestry also comes from Western Europe, North and Western Europe. And I have to put emphasis on that because racism, open racism, is virulent in the Black American community. And we always talk about something. I'm venerating my ancestors. And all you guys are religious, so you're supposed to honor your mother and father, right? That and then search out your forefathers for all you Bible readers, right? Job 8:8, right? And reverence those of the past. You don't do that when we tell you, hey, on average, you got a quarter of your ancestry going back to the Irish, going back to the Poles, going back to the British Isles, Iberia. You don't even respect your ancestors, man. You are of a mixing pot, a melting pot. You are the result of Europeans and Africans admixing. That's what you are. If you are African American watching this, you are definitely a result of admixture. And a little bit of Native American for some cases, right? And I even seen African American with East Asian DNA. We used to have a sister named Ray. Her mitochondrial DNA was E1A1A. I personally know brothers that have East Asian ancestry. My old lady, she got East Asian ancestry. She's African American. So we're a mixed bag. But y'all claim to be honoring the ancestors, and Ashe will honor your Irish ancestry, honor your British ancestry. You got real ancestors, and none of them have to do with Egypt. None of them have to do with Israelites, Cushites, all the ites, all the ites. This is insert name here and put ite after that. Black Americans, African Americans don't have anything to do with those groups by and large. So now we get papers like this, and they try to twist it to try to say something it's not. You understand? Trash both of us today in his live. I'm pretty sure he does. This guy, he has romanticized the word African. And that's another thing we need to talk about. People living in Africa, yes, they are African because they're on the continent of Africa. That does not erase their ancestry. That's the crazy part. I am an African American. I am an American. I live in America. That does not erase my 18% Irish DNA. Does not erase my Nigerian DNA. It does not erase that. Just because I live in the continent. Yes, I am an American. But these people that live in North Africa are genetically distinct from people that live in Tanzania, the people that live in Gabon and Benin and Togo and Ghana. Oh, yeah. You have to be Africanized. And remember, Unc told us non-African doesn't mean you're not African. Crazy, bro. Hey, Ramal Yahoo, insert ancient name here and put ites. I've heard people say that we were the Phoenicians, that we were, and y'all claiming Moors. Yes, there's a little sub-Saharan African admixture there, but don't get too crazy, right? Most of these Moorish people are North African Berber derived and Iberian mix. A lot of them are heavily Iberian. They spent 1,000 years there. What do you expect? So we are here to bring the reality back into the fold because a lot of you guys have been, essentially Walt Disney of the community, essentially Cartoon Network of the community. So I'm here to bring you guys back to earth, back to life, back to reality. I'm here to bring y'all back, man, because all these guys are just spewing garbage. You're not ancient Egyptians. You're not Israelites. Stop trying to keep doing what you do. I ain't going to say stop. Keep doing what you do because we're going to make content. And we're going to use you guys as examples to teach other people how to actually do this properly. And like biblical DNA said, Uncle said, you have to be Africanized. They Africanized it, whatever that means, you know, whatever that means. So we're gonna get into the paper, man. I'm gonna try not to make this too long of a video. I got to get up early again tomorrow. I'll go bust my ass. You know how it is, man. Out here in the grind. But be that as it may, Ramal Yahoo said, "Courage the cowardly dog." Yeah, these dudes are cowardly. They don't want to stand on what they say. They don't want to debate none of the stuff they say. They just throw rocks and hide their hand. We know how it goes. We've been seeing this for years. You understand? A lot of these people just want to grandstand on their platforms. And it's cool. Keep doing you, man. You know what I'm saying? We're just going to keep using you as a learning example to people. That's all. And for those that get it, those that get it. Those that don't, they don't. So y'all are worried about amassing a group of people because you want to be a cult leader. That's all. You want to draw people in with identitarian talking points. Ghetto Prince says, my ancient ancestry is North African Berber. Ghetto Prince, you may be telling the truth. I don't know your ancestry. I have 1% North African ancestry. There are some West African groups that connect to Berbers, and I can tell you exactly why that's the case. Is because if we look at our admixture, and I'll show you something. We were talking about this last night. I wanted to go live last night, but I've just been really busy, man. But be that as it may, if you guys look at this tab here, let me see, can you see that? This is why you have that Berber-like DNA, if you do have it, because I got 1% North African. This is maybe the explanation for it. Because there are West Africans on the continent also have it. Some of it's recent, some of it's more ancient, as you can see on the screen, from the African Genome Variation Project shapes medical genetics in Africa. And as you can see, your Yoruba and Gadangbe groups would have what we call essentially Eurasian DNA, and that's coming from that Northern African mix, because North African people in general are Eurasian adjacent because they result from a back to Africa migration. So what this means is this ancestry here had to be more northwest. This is why we also see it in Yamende Wolofs. We also see this signal in your ancient Senegalese people as well. They were more northwest, Western Sahara, Mauritania, Mali, some Algeria region over there, maybe some northern Niger action going on during the Green Sahara and possibly even before it, and then they migrate south. And that's what the evidence is showing us. We're more northwestern African and then become this Western Central African as time progresses. We're not in the East. We're not in Israel. So all of that's out of the window. We have no evidence for that. So if someone's saying, "Oh, well, we do connect to Berbers," it's through this through this admixture here, and it's probably because we are more genetically close to them in the ancient times as far as proximity goes. With that being stated, let's get back to this video. Let's get back to this paper. Let's see. Biblical DNA said, "I will be doing a video on both Reggie and Unc tomorrow. I have all the clips." All the clips LOL Reggie used AI to narrate, and it was a bunch of BS. Yeah, I saw portions of that video. I was watching portions of it, and I was like, yeah, this is bad. This is terrible. And I will, hopefully get to that video and just break down all of the bullshit he said. It's Reggie. Reggie's known for bullshitting people. You need that PP 405 for the peppercorn hair. The Greek, yeah, that was crazy, man. And Unc was on there just spewing nonsense, man. They still stuck on morphology and phenotype. Y'all just need real peppercorn hair, man. That's y'all problem. You got to have real peppercorn hair, man. And you know what? You just don't love Africa. That's what I'm told. Y'all don't love Africa, man. And that's called rebel rousing. That's an appeal to emotion. That is fallacious. Let's just deal with the damn information. Who cares what you love, what you like, what you don't like? What does the paper say? Yeah. I saw you in the comments laughing. Ghetto Prince says excellent present explanation, Yashu. Yeah, man. I try to bring the data to y'all, man. And these other dudes, these other clowns, man. They all about doctrine and ideology and identitarianism that they don't present the information. We literally watch not talk about the paper for like 2 hours straight, not talk about the paper, skim over it, not really dive into it. I want to dive into these papers, man. Let's get into what they say. And I want to bring this Green Sahara paper. This is not the first time I've talked about this on the channel, but I want to bring it back because you got a lot of suits that are just chopping and screwing this paper pretty bad. Yeah, I was on Sinetta, man. I had to. My man Ngozi was putting in work. I want to cover that video as well. You know what I'm saying? Home team history did the same, bro. Who was home team history? Who was home team? Man, it's been a hustle, bro, from selling DVDs on the street to what it is now. You know, now it's super chats and donations. You got this dude named Saint. You got to pay him $20 to even get your comment read on the stream. Like, it's all a Ponzi scheme, bro. That's all it is, man. Yeah, I gotta look. Y'all talking about Azar Yahoo talking about home team is pretty big. Ramal Yahoo home team be capping. Yeah, but so we, you know, he on my radar now. I gotta check out some home team videos next. We're gonna debunk and refute him. But anyway, and I'm pretty sure he's spewing some Afrocentric, outdated 50-year-old doctrine that just keeps being Frankenstein and reintroduced into the community. You know what I'm saying? That shit crazy. He said, yeah, home team chopped it up. Yeah, man, they be destroying papers, bro. They don't represent these papers correctly. They don't. I mean, literally the paper tells you that the Neurite descends from people that have a heavy Levantine base, which can signal multiple migrations. Literally says that. And they'll go off, oh, this paper don't. Yes, it does. You're just not reading it. Or you're reading it and you don't want to accept it. You know, it's got to be something similar to that. Anyway, ancient DNA from the Green Sahara reveals ancestral North African lineage. This paper came out. All these Afro-tards went crazy on social media. This paper not saying anything of the sort of, or proving that you are ancient Egyptian or that ancient Egyptians were sub-Saharan African. But I've seen people try to spin this paper to say that. And that's so crazy because it has nothing to do with it. First of all, it has nothing to do with the peopling of ancient Egypt. Secondly, it's talking about an isolate ancient North African group. I'm going to show that. The abstract, although it's one of the most arid regions today, the Sahara Desert was a green savanna during the African humid period between 14,500 and 5,000 years before present, with water bodies promoting human occupation and the spread of pastoralism in the Middle Holocene epoch. DNA rarely preserves well in this region, limiting knowledge of the Sahara's genetic history and demographic past. Here we report ancient genomic data from the Central Sahara obtained from two approximately 7,000-year-old pastoral Neolithic female individuals buried in the Takakori rock shelter in the southwestern Libya. So real quick, from the jump of the paper, from the beginning of the paper, we're establishing what we're talking about. We're talking about southwestern Libya. We're not even talking about the country of Egypt. We're not there. We're southwest, and we're not even east, close to Egypt. We're away from Egypt, right? Southwest, right? It says the majority of the Takar-Kori individuals' ancestry stems from previously unknown North African genetic lineage that diverged from sub-Saharan African lineages around the same time as present-day humans outside of Africa and remain isolated throughout most of its existence. This is what this paper is focusing on. It's not talking about the peopling of ancient Egypt. It's not even talking about the ancestry of ancient Egypt, because ancient Egyptians do not have this lineage as established by the Neurite genome, and it's going to be established even more by the Urok Research Institute. They're going to be producing a paper or a series of papers that's going to have a series of samples that are going to pretty much buttress what we already know about these people being West Asian adjacent. That's what we're seeing here. Darius, motherfuckers halfway across the Sahara and they want to connect it to Egypt. Say it ain't so. The reason why they want to do this is because the word Africa is in the context. So since the word Africa is in the context, Now they want to say, see? But this don't got nothing to do with no ancient Egyptian. This is an isolate group. Look up what the word isolate means and you get back with me. It says both Takakori individuals are closely related to ancestries first documented in the 15,000-year-old foragers from the Tafarat Cave, Morocco, associated with the Ibero-Mauritian lithic industry and predating the African human phase. Takakori and Ibero-Mauritians associated individuals are equally distantly related to sub-Saharan lineages, suggesting limited gene flow from sub-Sahara to North Africa during the African human period. So this is drastically different than what was once believed. We thought it was a highway that increased gene flow, but actually it was still limited gene flow. We're going to get into that, which flies in the face of Diop, which flies in the face of Obenga. All these ideas of claiming that ancient Egyptians came from the South, because that's what they go connect it to. They always try to connect everything to Egypt because they got to claim Egypt, right? Oh, we built the pyramids and everything. No, you didn't. Shut up. Those are Levantine-related people, ancient Neolithic Levantines going in and out of Africa, vasculating both and oscillating both regions. These are not those people. And what this paper is also demonstrating that there was not that much foot traffic going north to south. South to north, south to north. Sub-Saharan Africans were not pouring into North Africa like these guys are trying to get you to think. The evidence does not show that. And the proof of that is we have an isolated old North African lineage here that is almost untouched. And the only lineage it does have admixture with is Levantine people, which makes sense because North African people have Levantine admixture, starting with the Tafarat people having 60% of their genome going back to a Neolithic Levantine group known as the Natufians. Come on, man. Come on. It says, in contrast to Tafarat individuals who have half the Neanderthal admixture of non-Africans, Takakori shows 10 times less Neanderthal ancestry than Levantine farmers, yet significantly more than contemporary sub-Saharan African genomes. Our findings suggest that pastoralism spread through cultural diffusion into a deeply divergent, isolated North African lineage. You got to know what words mean. You got to know what isolated means. Deeply divergent, meaning it diverged. This lineage diverged a long time ago, right? A long time ago. The Out Africa group and the East African Forager group represent the Sub-Saharan African group. That long time ago is probably 50, 60,000 years ago in the past. That's when this lineage splits and it became isolated. It eventually becomes isolated. And to this day, we don't have living specimens with this DNA. We don't. This lineage pretty much died out for the most part. Reading on says, isolated North African lineage that had probably been widespread in North Africa during the late Pleistocene epoch. Late Pleistocene epoch. So if we get a late Pleistocene epoch, let me just show you what that is real quick, that time frame. Get an idea? But the Pleistocene is a very, very long time, right? This is the late Pleistocene epoch. It's spanning roughly from 129,000 years to 11,700 years. So this is a very, very, very old lineage. And it was isolated and it died off, right? Let's read on. So here's the main. It says, following the last glacial period, a climatic transformation in the Sahara Desert led to the African human phase, which peaked around 11,000 to 5,000 years ago. During this period of increased humidity, the region transformed into a green Sahara, with savanna-like landscapes varying tree cover, permanent lakes, and extensive river systems. Evidence from ancient lake deposit, pollen samples, and archaeological artifacts confirm human presence, hunting, herding, and resource gathering in the currently arid desert region. However, despite this rich history, much about the genetic history of the human population in the Green Sahara remains unclear due to the limited DNA preservation under the current climatic conditions. Ancient DNA data from northwestern Africa points to a stable and isolated genetic population from at least 15,000 to 7,500 years ago. This stability was disrupted by the arrival of early farming groups from southwestern Europe between 7,500 and 5,700 years ago, who marked the beginning of the Neolithic in the Maghreb by introducing farming practices to the local foragers. We have read many papers dealing with this KB population, the OUB population, the SKH population coming from the Levantine side of things. And we know from the recent Tunisian paper that even that group had a small input of South European as well, because we know that people came across the Sicilian Strait either via boat or most likely via boat, right? It says the earliest herders with their livestock entered Africa probably along the Sinai and the Red Sea routes, after which they rapidly spread into northeastern Africa and reached the central Sahara around 8,300 years ago. By 6,400 years ago, further gene flow occurred with the appearance of ancestry associated with the Neolithic groups from the Levant, whose archaeological signatures are visible in the Eastern Sahara. Where's the Eastern Sahara at? That's Egypt. That includes Egypt. Going towards Egypt, we can see these people there, right? And y'all want to. How do you use this paper? How do you go to this paper out of all? It's just crazy. A previous study analyzed mitochondrial DNA from individuals recovered from the Takakori rock shelter in the Tadrat Caucasus Mountains of southwestern Libya. The same individuals examined in this study provide the first ancient DNA from pastoralists of the Green Sahara. However, non-recombining and therefore effectively single genetic loci like mtDNA have much less statistical power to reveal population dynamics than genome-wide autosomal data. Again, that's why it's good to have complete genomes, because we can learn about the population dynamics. We're reading a Neurot paper. People say this is one individual, but yeah, that's telling you more about the overall population, because we're seeing more of his genome and we're knowing more about his ancestry. It says their origins and whether the arrival of pastoralism into the Green Sahara was linked to the movement of peoples from the Levant or rather cultural diffusion remain a matter of debate. And here's a depiction of the Green Sahara, primarily during the time that these two women would have lived, right here between 7,000 to 6,000 years before present. And even during this time, again, the Green Sahara went through phases. Right? Again, as you can see, the middle of the Sahara is arid. It is desert-like during this period. So again, this would still act as some kind of barrier to entry and travel like it does today. So it's very clear and obvious why this group right here, you see this little black square? It's not related to people, I don't know, like rainforest hunter-gatherers, which will be down here somewhere in modern-day Nigeria, right? It's still, this desert is still expanding at this period, and that's what this depiction is showing you. And this is the crazy part about it. Like, this shows that you guys are not reading these goddamn papers. You're not. You can't be. It's impossible for you to miss something like this, as trivial as something like this. So again, this is a map demonstrating how the climate would have been, how green this place would have been. And again, the green areas are more north and south, and you have still a huge area that is semi-desert or scrub land or turning into a desert. So here it is, the timeline of the climate phases and subsistence strategies during the late Pleistocene and the Holocene in the Northeast Africa and the Central Sahara. The radiocarbon dates for both the Korean individuals are given by the black diamond in the circle, as you guys saw. The distribution of ecozones in Northern Africa and the Green Sahara period during the early Holocene 9,000 years ago, and in recent times, using the dynamic vegetation model, carbon assimilation in the biosphere. The location of the Kori rock shelter site is marked with the black square. The maps are adapted from references under a Creative Commons license, and this is what we're looking at here. And you can see most of this is desert, most of it is yellow. But even here, you can see the beginning and growing and expansion of that desert. Everything's not green here. says here we present the first genome-wide data obtained from two approximately 7,000-year-old Saharan herders recovered from the Takakori rock shelter in the Central Sahara, a site that has yielded an exceptional wealth of data and material remains. Our findings show that these individuals predominantly carry a previously unknown ancestral North African lineage that lacks the Neanderthal admixture, typically found outside Africa, and appears to have remained largely isolated, with the notable exception of small traces of Levantine admixture. And again, this is probably coming from the interaction with other North African groups that are more northern, right? That have the Levantine admixture in them, Tafarat, the IAM population, the Keb, the SKH, because the Tafarat have an older Natufian-like Levantine DNA. Then you got the SKH population, which results from a later wave of post-migrations from the Levant, bringing in farming and subsistence strategies of that like. It says here, these results support that pastoralism in the Sahara was established through cultural diffusion rather than significant, that's the key word, significant human gene flow. Furthermore, the Takakori individuals exhibit a close genetic affinity to Northwestern African foragers, but no substantial ties. Here's the key. Here's the key. No substantial ties with sub-Saharan African lineages. Why are y'all bringing this paper up? Why? What does it have to do with any of y'all dumbass claims? I don't know, because first of all, I'm not even talking about Egypt, but somehow y'all try to make it relate to Egypt, and it's not even related to the people y'all trying to make Egyptians. Y'all want sub-Saharan Africans to be Egyptians. No, we don't. Y'all keep saying that the Egyptians come from the south. Those are sub-Saharan Africans. You want Egyptians to be Dinka-like, Nilotic. Some of y'all want them to be West African. They do not carry that lineage. And furthermore, this lineage doesn't even have anything to do with sub-Saharan African lineages. It says implying no detectable genetic exchange across the Green Sahara during the African human phase from sub-Saharan Africa to Northern Africa. This is what the paper says, implying no detectable genetic exchange across the Green Sahara during the African human phase from sub-Saharan to Northern Africa. Why the hell are you guys bringing this paper up again? Y'all saw the word African in the name, in the title, and you lost your mind. You busted a nut. You gotta go change the draws now. Stupidity, man. Idiocy. Lunacy. It says, for a non-peer-reviewed Arabic summary of the article, see supplementary note 3. The Takakori, a window into the Green Sahara. The Takakori rock shelter situated in southwestern Libya's Tatrat Caucasus Mountains offers a remarkable glimpse into the Sahara's greener past. The excavations at this archaeological site revealed a timeline of human settlement from the late Caucasus hunter-gatherer fissures from around 10,200 calibrated years before the present to a long pastoral Neolithic occupation dated from approximately 8,300 to 4,200 calibrated BP. Data from these later periods traces the social cultural trajectories of Neolithic herding societies in Central Sahara, from early livestock introduction to the development of a full pastoral economy characterized by transhumance and the use of the secondary product. Within the deepest recess of the rock shelter, 15 human burials were unearthed pertaining to a time frame between 8,900 and 4,800 calibrated BP, with the majority dating back to the early 8,300 to 7,300 calibrated before present, and middle 7,100 to 5,600 calibrated before present. Pastoral period. Strontium isotope analysis on the remains, primarily of women of reproductive age, children and juveniles. And again, the women, and if you read the supplementary, the women were between 30 and 40, I believe. It says indicating a local geographical origin. 2 naturally mummified adult female individuals attributed to the middle pastoral period were selected for our DNA analysis. These individuals directly radiocarbon dated to 7,158 to 6,796 and 6,555 to 6,281 calibrated years before present, with a 94.5% 95.4% probability, respectively. Genomic analysis. We extracted DNA from the powdered tooth root from individual TKH001 and from 2 fibula fragments from TKH009. Given their extremely low endogenous human DNA content, we opted for a DNA capture approach to cost-effectively retrieve informative single nucleotide polymorphisms, which are SNPs, for autosomal analysis. Sampling of other skeletal elements in the future may provide DNA extracts with a higher percentage of endogenous DNA that allow for whole genome shotgun sequencing using dedicated ancient DNA protocols. I'm going to skip all this because this is just technical jargon on how do they actually attain it. I want to go down and actually get to the meat and potatoes of this. All right, so here. It says to visualize the variation in the genetic ancestry of the Takakori individuals, we performed a principal component analysis using genome-wide data from 795 present-day individuals from the whole African continent, the Near East, Southern Europe, all genotype on the human origin SNP panel. We then projected the Takakori individuals in 117 relevant published ancient genomes onto the first 2 principal components. And we're going to talk about these components because the paper gives you one component and tells you about the 7% Levantine DNA. Well, that was a PC2, which shows a 27% Levantine-like DNA and like a 73% ancestral North African. And that's why it's good to actually comb through the supplemental information, so you can get more of the models and get more information that way. A great example of that, the paper that happened in 2017 says that E1B1B1, which I believe is EM35, could have originated outside of Africa, but that's in the supplement. When you read the paper, it says all of these haplogroups, the Y chromosome that was found, E1B1B1, and the 2J markers all have an out of Africa origin. That's all it says. And people got confused, like, oh, well, E1B1's there. Well, if you read the supplement, it tells you that E1B1B1, which is EM35, could have very well originated outside of Africa. And a lot of the evidence is showing that. But anyway, it says the Takakori individuals plot broadly intermediate, meaning in between West African and Near Eastern groups on PC1, albeit closer to West Africans. To obtain a finer scale view, we restricted the African populations to West Africa, the Sahel, and East Africa, while retaining the Near Eastern and Southern European population. This PCA captures the geographical distribution of these populations, whereby PC1 separates Africans from non-African populations, and PC2 differentiates within Africa, particularly separating Sahel West African from East African populations. Both Takakori individuals maintain a distinct position, intermediate between Sahel West and East African population. So they don't fall into the Sahel West African population, and they don't fall into the East African populations. They're in the middle on their own, meaning they're an isolated group, right? They're their own unique, distinct group. It says, informed a tight cluster with overlapping 95% confidence interval, ellipsis. The PCA projections broadly mirror geography, including the placement of the Takakori. For subsequent population genetic analysis, we merged the low coverage data from the TKH009 individual with the high coverage data from the TKH001 individual. We note that many of the signals in this group analysis are probably driven by TKH001 owing to its much higher coverage. And just real quick, again, I want to go over what was just said about this DNA mirroring the geographical location of these people. Because again, when we look at this map, are you guys reading this paper? The Takakori people will be literally in the middle. The West African groups over here to the west, and of course the East African over here. And that's how they plot genetically in the middle of these two populations. That's what it meant by mirroring the geographical positions. And that's usually how it goes. If you're going to have a shared DNA with someone, you got to be what? In close proximity. That's how you have sex with their women, and women have sex with their men, and they reproduce and produce offspring. Very simple, elementary stuff. Not hard to follow at all. So here's figure 2, the PCA calculated on present-day individuals from Africa, the Near East, Southern Europe, and the geographical locations of these individuals. Again, illustrated here. There you are, your West African groups down here. East African groups to the right, and the Takori plot somewhere in the middle. As you can see in the PC chart, here's your Takori, the spear, and the black diamond. And your West African groups are down here. Central African groups are down here. Central African foragers, like your rainforest hunter-gatherers. East African groups here. Your Tanzanians. East African pastoralists here. And Kenya and Tanzania. And Morocco. And then you got your North Africans again. What do you notice about North Africans? Your Morocco, Middle Neolithic, and Late Neolithic individuals. Who are they clustering with? Near Easterners, like we've been telling you. Same thing with the ancient Egyptians. Get 80% of their DNA from this Morocco Middle Neolithic group, which clusters with Near Easterners. So the ancient Egyptians will be somewhere up here with the Neurot sample, as we saw in the PCA chart for that paper. So again, I don't know how you go to this paper. How do you go to this paper and try to make a damn claim that's going to be in support of Diop, Obenga, any of these, Reggie, Shaka Amos? How do you go to this paper? I seen Asar, we talked about this paper when Asar went over it, and he butchered it and just like misrepresented the hell out this. How do you go to this paper and make these type of damn claims? Very interesting plot placement indeed, brother. Oh, anyway, PCA projecting key ancient groups from this region. The geographical location of ancient genomes from Africa and the Near East included in our analysis. And then here's all of the populations: the Chalcolithic, Enolithic, early Neolithic, Epipaleolithic, Iron Age, the IAM, the KB population, the KTG population, late Iron Age, late Neolithic, the OUB, which is Middle Neolithic, the Paleolithic, SKH. It says to probe for shared genetic drift of the Takakori with other ancient and modern genomes, we computed outgroup F3 statistics of the form F3 Takori X South Africa 2000 calibrated BP, with X representing worldwide ancient and present-day test populations, and South Africa 2000 calibrated BP as the deepest modern human outgroup lineage. We found that the Takakori individuals share the most genetic drift with Moroccan Paleolithic and early Neolithic individuals. Specifically, we observed the highest level with an Epipaleolithic individual from the E3 Oberid, and similarly elevated shared drift with the 15,000-year-old foragers from Tafarat and the early Neolithic individuals from the IAM population. Both Epipaleolithic and early Neolithic groups have been previously shown to maintain high genetic continuity with much older Tafarat group, explaining the similarly elevated shared drift statistics between all three groups in the Takakori individuals. And as we're going to see, that this is the DNA. See, years ago, about 2018, 2017, we learned about the Tafarat's genome. We learned about it had most of its DNA coming from ancient Levantine foragers, which are the Natufians, and the remaining of the DNA was coming from, at the time, a sub-Saharan African group. That's all we knew, a sub-Saharan African group. Well, this paper updates that, and actually that remaining 30% of that genome is actually related to this isolated North African group, which is why all of these groups are drifting at the same pace. They're all interrelated that way. And even in the supplemental, it tells you the reason why you have this Levantine group DNA found within these samples is because they mix with these people here, or people related to the Tafarat, people related to the Morocco Middle Neolithic peoples, as we can see here. Shared genetic drift and affinity with the Takakori genomes. And again, your Morocco, as you can see, these samples that go further to the right are the ones that share the most ancestry with them. And the one that shares the most is Morocco OUB Epipaleolithic population at 7,800 calculated before present. As you can see, it's more further right. So again, you're gonna have more affinity with this group, and then SKH, the Levant Neolithic, and then Natufians, and the Iranian group, less affinity with this group, less affinity with Kenya Pastoral Neolithic, Elementian. And here's the thing. You notice a trend here. As we get further and further away and more close to sub-Saharan Africa, the further away these groups are. Right, the Biaka, Mande, and Dinka and Yoruba, they're negative affinity to this group. What do you notice? The admix groups seem to be closer. Why is that? What is drawing what is drawing that affinity? What's drawing that affinity is the fact that these admix groups have non-African DNA, and as we're going to read, they cluster closer to these out of Africa groups than a sub-Saharan African. Anyway, let's keep going. It says, when restricting the comparative groups to present-day African and Near Eastern populations, we found that a group of individuals defined as Fulani A in a previous study, which includes individuals from relatively less admixed Fulani herders from 8 Sahelian countries, show an increased genetic affinity to the Takakori, although less so to Tafarot. This finding aligns with the reference which observed a non-sub-Saharan component in Fulani A. So again, what is drawing this group, the Fulani A group, what is drawing it towards the Takakori is the non-sub-Saharan ancestry of the Fulani, which they got from who? Right here, similar to that found in the Tafarot and late Neolithic Moroccans, which goes to what I was saying earlier. This lets you know the West African populations were in close proximity with the North African populations, but just on the west side of the continent, right? Western Sahara, Northern Mali, Mauritania, that area there. We have different clays like EV2, EV259, which is a West African Pacific E1B1B clay downstream from EM78. It's specifically the West African. It's probably due to these old interrelations that we had with the North Africans on the west side of the continent, right? But again, what's drawing this Fulani group towards the Takakori is its relation to the Tafarot, or this group relation to the Tafarot and late Neolithic Moroccans. It says, to further probe for Takori-like ancestry in Fulani A, we conducted an F4 analysis using the Masai Datog and the Iraq W as baseline references, owing to their similar amount of out of Africa ancestry to Takakori. The results indicated that Fulani A have an increased affinity to the Takori-like ancestry, as do other Sahelian and West African groups. These findings are consistent with the archaeological evidence of the southward expansion of pastoral Neolithic groups from Central Sahara. Rock art, ceramic production, and funerary practices provide detailed indications of the spread of these herders at the end of the Middle Holocene, probably driven by progressive aridification of the Central Saharan regions. Again, just to recap that, reason why you see that is because the non-African or non-sub-Saharan ancestry components we're seeing in these groups are owed to your Tafarot and late Neolithic Moroccans, or some people would just say, oh, the Maghrebi component. Being in close proximity with those groups in the past, we see segments of that DNA still in the populations that are in West Africa today, and that's what's drawing towards the Takori people, because they have that same admixture with that group. That explains the 7 to 27% Levantine DNA, which we're going to get into later. It says, given the high amount of shared genetic drift between the Takakori and the ancestry first appearing in the 15,000-year-old Tafarot individuals in the outgroups F3 statistics, we subsequently investigated whether the Takakori genomes share more alleles with other human groups compared to the Tafarot genome. For this analysis, we computed the statistics F4, where X represents ancient and present-day groups from Africa and Eurasia. We obtained significantly positive values for Eurasian and Eurasian African groups, suggesting that the Tafarot group shares more alleles with these groups than the Takakori does. Conversely, none of the ancient or modern groups tested showed a significantly negative signal, indicating no detected closer affinity with the Takakori than the Tafarot. Notably, both ancient and modern sub-Saharan groups, who are mostly unadmixed with Eurasian groups, yielded no significant value. So again, if a sub-Saharan African group does not have any admixture with a Eurasian group, they do not relate to the Takakori at all. That's what that's saying. Again, showing that what's drawing a close relation to these people is the non-African or non-sub-Saharan African components. Because the only reason you got this, like we just brought out, with the Fulani having any semblance to this group is because they connect to the Tafarot group. which is a North African group. It says, suggesting that these groups are equally distant from both the Takakori and Taforod groups and supplementary data. Moreover, when running statistics F4, we found significantly positive values for every population X, indicating that Takori shares more alleles with Taforod than any other group. At the mitochondrial DNA level, both Takakori, and again, this shows that the Taforod related population mixed in some capacity with the Takakori population. This is why they have that shared affinity. And this is why other African groups that are admixed have that shared affinity, because of the Taforod's related population. It's also related to your Fulani and other West African groups. It says at the mtDNA level, both Takakori individuals belong to a basal branch of haplogroup N, representing one of the deepest mitochondrial DNA lineages outside sub-Saharan Africa and predating present-day N-derived mtDNAs. Using beast analysis for mtDNA dating, which included additional sequences from upper Paleolithic individuals in a data set described previously, we corroborate the previous findings of reference that the Takakori individuals carried a basal N haplogroup lineage. And I heard I'll bring on a basal haplogroup lineage. Just keep reading. Just keep reading. Just keep reading. And basal means at the base, right? The first. It says, and refine the molecular split date to estimate to 61,343 years old. It goes on to read, notably, the mtDNA lineage of OIC1 individual falls more basal to haplogroup N. So an even more basal group is in the OIC1 individual. Where was OIC1 found? In Romania. Again, all these papers, it's like y'all not reading the paper, you don't understand the paper. OIC1 is an individual that was found in Romania, right? Suggesting an earlier split from the outer African lineage before the divergence of the Takakori lineage. So before the Takakori lineage is born, before that mutation shows up on the mtDNA, there was an earlier split in the OIC1 individual that we find all the way in Romania, I think 30 to 40,000 years ago. So no, you're not reading this paper correctly. You don't understand this paper correctly. It is not saying that the Takakori have the oldest mitochondrial N lineage. No, the oldest mitochondrial N lineage is still outside of Africa within the OIC1 individual. If you know how to read the damn paper, if you know how to read it, that's a big if, because y'all don't. And it's clear because the stuff y'all be saying. It says, however, owing to incomplete lineage sorting and mtDNA representing a single lineage, the exact timing of the underlying population splits remains uncertain. Now we're going to move on to the admixture of the Taforod. It says previous work modeled the Taforod's group's ancestry as a two-way admixture of approximately 63.5%. And again, Taforod represents an old group that lived in Morocco about 15,000 years. I believe it goes all the way back to like 20 to 25,000 years. But the DNA we have is about 15,000 years old. And when they were able to successfully take the genome, this is what they reported. 63.5% Natufian was ancient Levantine foragers and 36.5% sub-Saharan African ancestry. So at the time when this news broke, we thought it was sub-Saharan African DNA. However, this model using the software QPAtom could not pinpoint the origin of Taforod's African ancestry, resulting in an unknown ghost ancestry only broadly linked to Southeast and Central African groups. Here we included Takakori as a possible source of the African ancestry in the Taforod and comparison to several potential sources, namely the Yoruba, Dinka, Mota, Cameroon, Sri Lanka, Botswana, Sharo, early Iron Age. In Tanzania, Son of Sabar, 1300 calibrated before present. Through rotation-based QPAtom, we found that the Saharan Takakori provides a much better fit as an African proxy for the Taforod than the sub-Saharan groups. So again, literally the Taforod are an admixed group of people with Levantine-like ancestry and ancestral North African ancestry. And we only see it with the Taforod. The lineages after that do not have this segment of DNA. So it shows at that period, there was some admixture there. Primary ancestry coming from Levantine foragers, rest of it coming from this ancestral North African group. Again, we're almost done with the damn paper, and none of this is, proving out anything Reggie has been saying, anything that Shaka Amos has been saying, anything any of these Afrocentric nuts have been saying, and damn sure ain't proving out anything Unc was saying. Anyway, it says attaining a p-value of less than 0.05, indicative of a much better model fit compared to the other sources, which had a p-value of greater than 2.84 times 10 to the negative 34 power. It says, with this revised model, we estimated that the top fraud ancestry retains a comparable 60.8% plus or minus 1.8% contribution from the Natufians, with the remaining 39.2% plus or minus 1.8% derived from the Takakori, literally an admixed group of old ancestral North African and Levantines. We next explored the direct genetic affinity between Takakori and the out-of-African ancestry found in all non-African modern humans, in contrast to African groups. For this, we computed F4 statistics of the form, and it says Slotty Kuhn, a 45,000-year-old upper Paleolithic individual from Czechia, was used as a proxy for out-of-African ancestry, as it is probably the oldest modern human sequence to date and represents the deepest known human lineage after the out-of-African lineage splits from the African lineages. Our results showed positive values for Takakori, indicating that it is genetically closer to Slotty Kuhn than to sub-Saharan Africans. Whoop, there it is. So you guys, it all should be culminating in your head right now. This is why groups that are in sub-Saharan Africa that drift towards the Takakori group at all, it's because of the admixture. The groups that have admixture with non-African groups are going to drift towards them because the Kori itself is going to be more genetically closer to non-African groups than a sub-Saharan African group. Why? Because of the Tafarot admixture. All right, man. Maybe. See, we actually read the papers over here. These other dudes don't. They clowns. Y'all clowns. Y'all misrepresent, distort, contort the information. Reading on, it says, including the Moda, a 4,500-year-old genome from East Africa, which represents East African forager DNA, right? This DNA does not cluster with that DNA. It clusters closer to Slotty Kuhn, right? So nevertheless, various African populations with substantial out of Africa admixture were still genetically closer to Slotty Kuhn than to Takakori. If you can see what's drawing that affinity, the out of African admixture. These results raise the question of whether Takakori's ancestors are closely related to out of Africa groups but remained in Africa, or whether they received later gene flow from out of Africa groups. If the Takakori experienced such later gene flow, it would carry Neanderthal admixture that is found in all out of Africa groups. To explore this signal, we use the data generated using archaic admixture SNP panel for Takakori in the software Admix Frog that detects Neanderthal segments and included other ancient African and Eurasian groups as well as modern sub-Saharan African populations for comparison. We detected a total 12 Neanderthal fragments that surpassed the 0.05 centimorgan in length, with the longest fragment located on chromosome 1, translating to a low level of Neanderthal ancestry in the Takakori genome of approximately 0.15%. This percentage is less than a quarter of the Neanderthal ancestry segment longer than the 0.05 centimorgan found in Tafarot, and Morocco individuals at a 0.6 to 0.9%, and about tenfold lower than most out of Africa groups, which they have about 1.4 to 2.36%, yet significantly higher than that in other ancient and contemporary sub-Saharan African genomes. So, whoop, there it is again. We know they didn't get this DNA, they didn't mix with sub-Saharan Africans, because again, they don't have the same rate as them. The sub-Saharan Africans have very low Neanderthal admixture. Again, the donor population for this admixture is the Levantine percentage of the admixture. And again, that population is most likely the Tafarot or Tafarot-related ancestry, because we already know the Tafarot, the old ancient Moroccans, mix with this group because they have 39% of their genome which is attributed to the old North African lineage. It says, yet significantly higher than that in other ancient and contemporary sub-Saharan African genomes where Neanderthal ancestry was completely absent. This pattern suggests that the Takakori individuals have received a small amount of ancestry from out-of-Africa groups. However, the estimation of admixture dating of this out-of-African ancestry with dates based on linkage disequilibrium indicated very ancient admixture events with substantial uncertainty, which makes a lot of sense. This is older Levantine-like ancestry. Again, we see a 15,000-year-old group already admixed with this group, so it would be older and not as opposed to being more recent. And here's the Neanderthal ancestry and admixture graph. As you can see, it's higher in, let's say, a German population from 7,500 years ago. Next up is the SKH population, Levant Neolithic have it, then your Taforalt have it at a lower clip. And then there's your Takori, still higher than most of the sub-Saharan African groups, which means there was some gene flow from other groups with Neanderthal-like genes. A is the detectable Neanderthal ancestry in segments longer than 0.05 centimorgans in ancient CM in ancient individuals from Africa and Eurasia, along with present-day sub-Saharan African groups. And again, as you see, present-day sub-Saharan African groups have very low amounts of Neanderthal DNA. They do have it, but at a very low clip. Mandinka, Yoruba, mainly the Niger-Congo speaking groups have it. And then like your isolated groups like your Sun, some of your rainforest hunter-gatherers and stuff like that, they even have a very, very, very little bit or none at all. And it says the error bars represent the minimum and maximum estimates from all iterations. The B map here, or the next segment of here, this depiction, it's the geographical location of groups included in the analysis. And then the C is the admixture graph modeling of the Takakori's ancestral relationship with relevant populations. As you can see, the population that's responsible for creating the out-of-Africa group is also the population responsible for creating the old North African group. As you can see here, you have the sub-Saharan group splitting off into what we call the Ethiopia Moda-like DNA, and then a branch off of that branches off into your out-of-Africa group that produces your Iranian Neolithic and Levantine Natufian groups, and then another group making your old ancestral North African group coming from that same ancestral cline. As you can see, that's what this arrow right here, you see where it says 6 at? That arrow right there represents that. So the same ancestral group responsible for the out-of-Africa group is the same ancestral group responsible for the old North African ancestral group. As you can see, it leads down. This lineage gives about 93% of its ancestry to the Takakori, and the out-of-Africa group via the Levantine Natufian gives 7%. As you can see, this 7% goes through the Morocco Taforalt. Why? Because the donor population for this Levantine-like DNA is most likely the Taforalt, because the Taforalt were admixed with this North African group. As you can see, 38% of their DNA coming from the old North African population, or the ancestral North African population, and 62% of the Moroccan Taforalt coming from the Levantine-like ancestry, which will be the out-of-Africa ancestry. It goes on to read, finally, we use the find graphs function from the admix tools to package to model Takori's ancestral relationship with other populations. We use a function for automated graph exploration with a model that includes Moda, Iran, Neolithic, Natufian, Taforalt, Takakori, and the outgroup chimpanzee. The model fits the small F statistic residuals. The fitted graph suggests that Takori traced most of its ancestry, 93%, to a hitherto unknown North African population in agreement with the isolation signature obtained from the F4 statistics mentioned above. This unknown North African population is closely related to out-of-African populations and branches off, here it is, branches off the lineage leading to out-of-Africa later than the ancient individual from Moda Cave, Ethiopia, who represents the sub-Saharan African lineage most closely related to out-of-African groups identified so far. There you go. You know, reading is fundamental. Reading is very, very fundamental. Again, this unknown North African population is closely related to out of African populations. Why? Look, it literally branches off from the same population that creates this out of African population. Literally, the line 24 is the lineage that creates the out of African branch, and then line 35 is the line that connects and creates the ancestral North African lineage, and they both converge at line 6. Line 6 creates both of these, diversion creates both of these lineages. In our model, the remainder of the Takori individual's ancestry, 7%, is derived from a deeply ancient Levantine source. And they hate that word. I got these Negroes hating the word Levant. Oh, Yashub said they Levantines. I'm gonna read it again. The remainder of the Takori's individual ancestry, 7%, is derived from a deeply ancient Levantine source. The Levantine gene flow also accounts for Neanderthal ancestry found in Takakori, as the Levantine Neolithic genomes carry around 1.86% Neanderthal ancestry, aligning with our estimates using Adnet's frog. The graph also models Tafra as a mixture of 40% contribution from a Takakori-related branch and 60% from a Natufian-related branch, consistent with our QP Adam results. Now we're going to get into the discussion. And after the discussion, we're going to get into the supplemental. I got my notes here. I'm going to be going over, we're going to go over page number 5 to explain the desertification, so you guys can understand what was actually going on during this time. Page number 37, dealing with the genetic discontinuity, showing that this is why we see populations today in sub-Saharan Africa being genetically differentiated from people today in North Africa, and it wasn't much different 7,000 or 8,000 years ago. As the paper says, we're going to go to page 59 to discuss the Levantine DNA and how they got it, and page 79 to deal with more of the PC charts. And then we're going to wrap it up. Our study introduces ancient genome-wide data from humans that inhabited the Green Sahara, providing unique insights into genomic ancestry of populations in this region. The individuals from the Takakori rock shelter predominantly carry an ancestral African lineage, representing an ancestry profile that has not been previously described. They share the most genetic drift with Epipaleolithic and early Neolithic individuals from the IAM population, as well as the 15,000-year-old foragers from the Tafra cave in Morocco, suggesting a long-standing and stable population in North Africa before the African human period. Plausibly, this ancestry was present in large parts of North Africa after the Out of Africa event, and the Takakori individuals inherited from the group that inhabited the area during the final period of the late Akakis, 10,200 to 8,000 calibrated before present. In southwestern Libya, this period preceded the arrival of domesticates and is characterized by cultural advancements within those hunter-gatherer groups. This included an increase in sedentism and the use of sophisticated material cultures such as pottery, basketry, and bone and wooden tools. We found that individuals from Takakori exhibit only a marginal amount of genetic admixture from Levantine groups, suggesting that the emergence of pastoralism in the Sahara was primarily driven by the dissemination of cultural practices rather than through large-scale human migration, as suggested on archaeological basis. Material culture at the onset of the earliest pastoral period shows both continuity and change, reflecting possibly complex assimilation dynamics during socio-economic transitions. These patterns may further suggest gradual cultural transformation rather than abrupt population replacement. This interpretation is further supported by the comparatively lower levels of Neanderthal genetic admixture found in the Takakori individuals. Our admixture dating analysis points to events far back in time, suggesting a more heterogeneous spread of pastoralism and food production in the Sahara compared to Morocco and East Africa, where there was a noticeably increase in recent Levant genetic admixture. Again, y'all not reading this paper because, again, y'all bring up, this proves the Egyptians. What we've been, no, it's not proven about the Egyptians. Again, because we know the Egyptians, they live in Northeast Africa, and we know that we read earlier the Eastern Sahara and all that had a client of Levantine people in migration going back. We know this through the Neurot genome. We know this from the third intermediate mummies. We know this now. All of the haplogroups are aligning to it. Almost all of the North African haplogroups to this date have been non-African. Almost all of them. And for some reason, you can have Yahya have a G2. We can have samples like U5 that was found in Tunisia. We found it in the Jehudi Nak sample as well. Like you guys are cooked on this. We do know there has been multiple migrations, post-migrations in and out of North Africa for thousands of years, and we see it. We see it in the genomes. I don't know how you go to this paper to try to negate that. This paper doesn't. It largely focuses on the isolated group, but even in that isolated group, it still has old Levantine DNA, probably old to these North Africans that have already been mixing with Levantines all these years. Anyway, reading on. In addition to these findings, a run of homozygosity analysis of TKH001 revealed no ROH segments larger than 12 cm, indicating no close kin in breeding. Several shorter ROH segments over 4 cm suggest an effective population size of around 1,000 individuals, reflecting a moderately sized population. Our research offers insight into the ancestry of previously published Tafara hunter-gatherers. While a previous study could not precisely ascribe the sub-Saharan component in the Tafara genome, we now identify this ancestry as a deep North African lineage with higher proportions found in the Saharan Takakori individuals. This refines the earlier model, which proposed a dual admixture of Natufian and broadly sub-Saharan African ancestry. Our updated model suggests that the Tafara ancestry is composed of 60% contribution from a Natufian-like Levantine population, with the remaining 40% derived from a Takakori-like ancestral North African population. Notably, both the late Pleistocene Tafara and mid-Holocene Takakori individuals demonstrate equally distant relationships with sub-Saharan African lineages. This pattern suggests, here it is for all you Afro-tarts out here, you need to listen to this. This pattern suggests that no substantial genetic exchanges across the Green Sahara occurred during the African humid phase or other humid periods preceding the later Pleistocene. The Sahara, spanning around 9 million kilometers squared, and housing diverse biomes such as grasslands, wetlands, woodlands, and lakes, mountains, and savannas, probably saw fragmented. Here you go. Everybody, all the Afro-tards need to hear this. Y'all need to hear this. This is up-to-date information. They probably saw fragmented habitats impacting human gene flows. It was very restricted. It wasn't this wide open highway. These ecological barriers, combined with social and cultural barriers, spatial structuring of populations, and the selective adoption of specific practices, may have facilitated the widespread dissemination of similar archaeological features, while limiting extensive genetic admixture. Are you guys reading this paper? The answer is clearly no. Why are you using this paper to try to make any claim by ancient Egypt is beyond me. Secondly, it's telling you there's no great, huge highway of genetic admixture going this way and that way, because they always bring it, the Green Sahara, this is why Egypt became the way it was. No. Are you going to accept the paper? Or are you going to actually read the paper and acknowledge it? At least acknowledge the shit. This genetic discontinuity is consistent with modern data, which shows substantial genetic differentiation across the Sahara beyond just a geographical gap. Again, the people that live below the Sahara have a completely different autosomal admixture than the people that live above the Sahara, the people that live in North Africa. And it seems to have been the same during the African humid phase. It says our findings suggest that sporadic Green Sahara events, particularly before pastoralism, were insufficient to allow for considerable genetic exchange, mirroring the Sahara's persistent role in limiting human genetic flow, as reflected in both ancient and modern population structures. I know that hurts your soul. I know that burns into your damn psyche, but that is the damn reality. That's the reality we live in. Accept it. Our findings represent an important initial step in future genetic studies, could reveal more refined insights into human migration and gene flow across the Sahara. As sequencing costs continue to fall, whole genome sequencing could enable more unbiased estimates regarding out-of-Africa events and other key aspects of human evolution, and that is the motherfucking deal. But we want to go over the supplemental. So let's close that. And let's open my handy dandy Word document because they were being weird and did not make it a PDF file for some reason. Share screen. I'm going to go to window and I want my Word document. So let me open this up. And here is the supplemental. Make sure you guys can see that viewing. All right. So I just want to start real quick. I know we in the lightning section now. It's 10:21. I need to get my ass to sleep. Be honest with you, I need to take my ass to sleep. But I don't want to end this video without going over this information. So I just want to go to page 5 so you guys can just understand the period of time we're talking about. Here's the map here. Again, as you can see, this is all steep shrubland, semi-desert, and some of it is turning to a desert during this time frame. It says the AHP ended due to a shift toward drier conditions, often referred to as African humid period termination. This change was triggered by shifts in Earth's orbit over time, which reduced the amount of sunlight reaching the northern hemisphere in the summer. As a result, monsoon rains became less intense, leading to a return to a drier environment. This quick drop in heavy seasonal rains led to the drying out of the North Africa and development of the Sahara Desert as we recognize today. But if you look at this map here, you can see the black diamond that represents the population that we're dealing with. And this population would have lived towards the more greener areas. But as you can see, that desert is starting to grow during this time period, which would cause for limited gene flow in this region as well. So you got to know what time period you're talking about. If this part is becoming semi-desert, steep, and shrubland, more people are going to go toward the green areas because they want to survive, right? Anyway, you want to be able to feed. It's very important that you're able to feed yourself. From there, let's go to page 46. We're in the lightning round, y'all. We're in the lightning round. Page 46. All right, so this is going over the F4 statistics, just to reinforce what was said there about the Fulani having the Takori-like ancestry and why. It says, given the strong genetic drift shared between the Takori and Tafarat in the outgroup F3 statistics, we further examine whether the Takori genome shared more alleles with other human groups compared to Tafarat. And then it gives you what they put into the statistics. This is where X represents ancient present-day population of Africa and Eurasia. The results show significantly positive values for Eurasian and Eurasian admixed African groups. So that's the only reason we see this relation with the Fulani people, right? Indicating that the Tafarat shares more alleles with these groups than Takakori. In contrast, all sub-Saharan African groups are equally related between Takakori and Tafarat. It says here, to further confirm the Takakori-like ancestry in the Fulani, we conducted an F4 analysis using Masai, Tatog, and Iraq as baseline references due to the similar amount of out-of-Africa ancestry as the Takakori. The results indicated that the Fulani have a Takakori-like ancestry indistinguishable from other Sahelian groups. Why is that? It's because, again, they're a Eurasian admixed African group. I just wanted to bring that out because I just know how y'all think. Y'all just going to say stupid shit, so I'm trying to eliminate that right now. I'm trying to nip that shit in the damn bud. So let's go from there. No, but you shoot these people. No, they're not ancestral North African. That's just, let's cut that out. Now we're going to go to page 59, and then we got page 79. And page 59 is going to explain that there's two interpretations to the Levantine-like DNA that we see in these samples, which I haven't seen anyone bring this out yet. Everyone who's covered this paper, I have yet to see them bring this out. So we might be the first to do this. We maybe not. Maybe we're thinking too much about it. Maybe there's somebody out there. Hopefully, I can subscribe to their channel and start watching their stuff. So again, here's the alternative models for the Takakori group. And as you can see, the alternative admixture graph is the figure 224. It was mentioned in the paper, but it didn't go over it. What it went over was figure 2 23, which attributes 93%. Remember, we went over this. Line 35 and line 24 diverge from a common ancestral lineage, which is line 6. So the Outer Africa lineage and the ancestral North African lineage both diverge from the same source. And this model gives 93% of that ancestry to the Takakori peoples. Here's the alternative model. Line 0 creates the ancestral group in line 30, which is the Outer Africa group. And it only gives 73% of ancestral North African to the Takakori group. And it has 27% Levantine-like DNA, as you guys can see, 27%. And just read it here. Alternative admixture graph modeling Takakori's ancestral relationship with relevant population. The model fits with F statistic residual C-score max. The graph suggests that Takori traced around 73% of its ancestry to a hitherto unknown North African population, and the remaining 27% is derived from an ancient Levantine source, not Tufian-like ancestry. And this model is going to say the same thing. It's going to do a little differently, but it's the same numbers. It's still going to get 73%, the unknown North African population ancestry, and still going to end up with 27% of this ancestral Levantine-like DNA. So the more you know. From there, we're going to go to page 79, and that's going to be the end of this little lightning segment we're having here, going over the supplementary DNA, supplementary segments of this paper. So 79 is to cap it off, piss the Afrocentrics off. I believe it's here. It talks about mitochondrial haplogroup N for the people struggling with this. So if you go to the supplement, it just clearly says this. It says here, in our work, we perform beast analysis, we're here, for mtDNA data utilizing the same amount of genomes that Va et al. 2019 complemented by 49 ancient genomes. These 49 encompasses all the 42 genomes from the aforementioned Va et al. Study, with the exception of the Dune side, genome from Shilabusk et al. 2017 and the 12967 Hora sample, and these samples here in the South Africa genome from Skogland et al. 2017. Instead, we added 6 individuals from the Bakokiro, Bulgaria, 1 from Sladikun, Czechia, 1 from Salkit, Mongolia, and the Goyet Q116-1 sample, all which are more than 30,000 years old and have a basal branch of the N group. So when y'all read the paper, y'all be like, oh, this is the oldest haplogroup N. Y'all out of y'all fucking element, man. Like, for real. Let's just keep reading. Our findings are in line with those of Ba et al. Our beast analysis estimated the most recent common ancestor for the branch containing the Takakori individuals to be 61,343 years old. Moreover, the tip date for the shared node, the TKH001 and TKH009, is approximated to be 12,938 years old. By including additional mtDNA sequences from upper Paleolithic individuals, we observe a narrowing of the confidence intervals for the most recent common ancestor estimate of the Takakori branch within the enclave. The corresponding phylogenetic tree is illustrated in supplemental figure 2.34. And here's the tree here. As you see, the Takakori individuals are there, branching off this old lineage. This old N lineage. You see older lineages here as well. Let me go down. Let's see, where is, go down. Technical details. All right, so here. Clock rate, I don't want the technical details. I had my notes about the genetic discontinuity. Did we read that? Well, I wanted y'all to see the mitochondrial haplogroup N. Again, in the paper, it talks about OIC1. I wanted that to be a point of emphasis, that being the oldest basal sample of haplogroup N that we have. Oh, here it is here. I didn't even read it. So right here it says the study of Va et al. 2019 revealed that the TKH 001 individuals exhibit a mitochondrial haplogroup that had not been previously identified in Africa. This haplogroup is classified under a basal branch of haplogroup N, which diverged immediately after the Paleolithic 40,000-year-old OAZ1 individual and before all present-day N-derived mtDNA. So again, this paper literally spells it out for you. You ain't got to guess. They come after the haplogroup N population that produced OAZ1. They come after. They're not the first group with haplogroup N. The OAZ1 are the first documented group with haplogroup N, not the Takakori. So I shouldn't hear that no more, but I know I'm going to keep hearing it because you're not reading this shit, and it's obvious. I sat down, I took meticulous notes, and that's the motherfucking deal. I'm out. I hope y'all learned something because y'all gonna get indoctrinated by these other groups. Yeah, very deceptive, Torah. Very, very deceptive. These guys, and I don't know if they're doing it on purpose or they're just ignorant of the information. That's the crazy part. Are you doing it on purpose or are you just ignorant of the damn information? Or is it a mix of the two? This paper had nothing to do with ancient Egypt. It had nothing to do with Diop, had nothing to do with Shaka Amos. It does not tie y'all, tie sub-Saharan Africans to North Africa. It tells you that there's very little gene flow between these damn groups, North African, sub-Saharan African. And again, this is an isolated group that eventually died out because we don't see it in present day groups like that. It's not prevalent anymore. That's what this paper was about. Y'all took it and twisted it and made it about some other bullshit to produce some idea that you got, or try to support some weird ass idea that you got that, oh, these green Saharan populations was just popping up and they populated Egypt. And they were sub-Saharan like. And we got the word Africans there, brother. So that means that they were, but if you read the paper, they're more closely related to Slatikun, which is an ancient Chechen population, more closer to outer African groups. And what ties them to a Sahelian group is their admixture with non-African groups like Yatafarot, which is majority of its DNA is Levantine DNA. So hopefully y'all learned something, man. I'm out, gang. I am Lucifer, the greatest adversary of all Afrocentrics and Black Hebrew Israelites for a fucking reason. Let's fucking go.
Smooth was good, baby.
Right. I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. Get these niggas on my comments before I shoot them. I got suicidal thoughts in the night, don't make me lose it. The only thing could get some time from me is OGs. I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. Get these niggas on my comments before I shoot them. I got suicidal thoughts in the night, don't make me lose it. The only thing could get some time from me is OGs. I'm a big dog, I don't want you now. Make the crowd scream, run them own guns. I bitch you ready, red, bro, you down. He was supposed to be with Caesar Matthews, he's a 9. How you let the stinks take your pieces from me? Turn a nigga head into a racist cop. You wasn't on the main line, you was PC'd up. We got Draco in the building, turn to Stevie Wonder. Now we back to the punchlines. I'm finna do a nigga sleazy like that one time. I got a free bus pass, he on that one line. I turn my wrist and handicap like that blind nigga. I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. Get these niggas on my comments before I shoot them. I got suicidal thoughts in the night, don't make me lose it. The only thing could get some time from me is OGs. I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. Get these niggas on my comments before I shoot them. I got suicidal thoughts in the night, don't make me lose it. The only thing could get some time from me is OGs. Yeah. I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. For real. Suicidal thoughts in the night, don't make me lose it.
I'm a big dog, I don't conversate with poodles. I make street music you can commit violent crimes too. If we beefing, I use chunks from your noodles and make spaghetti. Throwing house party when you hear them pop shots, it's not confetti. That shit under meniscus, I can eyeball it, no fatty. For a nickel, my shooter ain't a nigga world Armageddon. I want more chains to whip like my shit ain't broke already. And I don't wanna hit that crystal cause I'm dope already. Things came to take the rag ain't over and I hope y'all ready. Bitch act stupid, I fuck your mama, bitch, you know I'm petty. Nigga think he fucking with me, must be blowed off fatty. This exotic stinky buzz, we don't smoke that Reggie.
I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. Get these niggas on my comments before I shoot them. I got suicidal thoughts in the night, don't make me lose it. The only thing could get some time from me is OGs. I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. Get these niggas on my comments before I shoot them. I got suicidal thoughts in the night, don't make me lose it. The only thing could get some time from me is OGs. Yeah. I'm a big dog, I'm coming several losers. me lose it.